Well, hello everybody. It has been too long. It's been a moment, but I'm back. Dwight Doodles. This time around, it is the very important process of something known as respiration. Now, respiration sits in the module B4, which is accompanied with photosynthesis. Now, what we should know, prior knowledge going into this, is what is respiration? So that's what I'm going to focus on first. And then, as always, the real icing on the cake is we've got a beautiful extended response question. It's got the command term explained, so I'm going to go through that. This is a classic question that if it does pop up on the real exam, respiration aerobically, then this is the question that they're going to ask, minus some changes here. So let's begin our journey. So the first thing is oxygen. Why do we need oxygen? Well, the first thing we've got to be aware of is this is my attempt at drawing some lungs. So we breathe in. When we breathe in air. Air contains oxygen. So let me introduce our character of oxygen. Here they are. So the oxygen will move down your windpipe into your bronchi, into your bronchioles, and then it goes into air sacs. These air sacs are known as alveoli. Alveoli. I'm making sure I spelled that correctly. And the oxygen needs to get into the blood. So all of these modules on paper 1, B1, all interlink. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 oxygen molecules, O2. And as the blood comes, got a leaky pen. As the blood, let's try a different colour. Let's go for a bit of orange. As the blood, with the red blood cells, comes moving past the alveoli in the lungs, as you can see, we've got 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's in location A. There's location A. And in location B, as the red blood cells come past, they don't have any oxygen because they're redistributing the carbon dioxide back into the alveoli to be exhaled or breathed out. So in location B, we don't have any. So what that does is it creates what's called a concentration gradient. And that means every time we have an oxygen molecule, it will diffuse into the blood. Right, but where's it going? Once it's in the blood, we move over to this chap. This is the heart. And again, there's another video based on this that you can look at. And the blood containing the oxygen comes into the left side of the heart, which is the atrium here, left atrium. It goes into the left ventricle, and then the muscle here squeezes, forces the blood down the aorta, and then from the aorta, this is where the oxygen needs to be delivered. This is our cell. So what we'll do is we'll pop in the red blood cell. Inside the red blood cell, we'll pop 4 oxygen molecules. Now, we need to get those oxygen molecules through the capillary wall, short diffusion pathway, through the cell membrane, short diffusion pathway, into the cytoplasm, and then delivered to this thing called the mitochondria. Now, this is essential for this process of respiration. The same process happens here as it does here. The oxygen diffuses, high concentration to a low concentration, down a gradient. There's 5 there, there's none there. And the same principle applies here. There's 4 there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's in location A. Here's B. There's nothing in B, creates the gradient, and so it moves down the gradient, doesn't require energy. But what else must be delivered? Now, the other thing that must be delivered, it's not to scale, is sugar. Now, the sugar in question is a simple sugar known as glucose. So this will also diffuse across on the short diffusion pathway into the mitochondria. And what we now have is our sugar, and we have our oxygen, our O2. So we have C6H12O6. That is the elements and atoms that make up a single glucose molecule. Now, this interlinks to photosynthesis because this glucose molecule is produced by photosynthesis. And so when the sun radiates down its energy, the plant can absorb that energy and it holds the sugar molecule together at these bonds. So once we get that delivered to the mitochondria breaks down the glucose molecule, releasing the energy that was holding it together, and it allows the cell to do three things. It allows the cell to move substances across its membranes and internally. This links to something called active transport. There is another video of that on the channel, please find. The energy that's released provides a warmer environment. It gives off its exothermic heat, and therefore it maintains body temperature, which is 36.7. And also, it allows the cell to build larger molecules. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you have glucose plus glucose plus glucose plus glucose, we can build something called glycogen. We did that in B5. Or if it's a plant, it can make something called cellulose. So that's the process of respiration. It is oxygen plus glucose equals carbon dioxide plus water. Autumn Gangster Crew winner. That's how I've taught it in the past to certain classes in order to remember it. That's what they call the word equation. But the most important thing is the energy that is released from the glucose. That means the reaction is exothermic, releasing energy to the surroundings so the cell can move. That's move things around, active transport, maintain an internal body temperature or a temperature that facilitates enzyme activity, build larger molecules. The oxygen is needed because when the glucose is broken down, you've got 6 carbon atoms. But if you add a carbon atom to an O2, you get CO2. So it picks up all of the atoms and removes them. So aerobic respiration, air is with oxygen. Air, oxygen. And then it's the energy release that's the most important thing. Now, if you're exercising, your cells, your muscle cells, need to move much faster. Therefore, they would require more oxygen and more glucose. In order to get more oxygen, your lungs would have to breathe faster, deeper, so every breath inhaled more oxygen. Your heart is what pumps the blood with the oxygen and glucose to your cells. Now, if you're exercising, you need to release more energy, so you will need both oxygen and glucose in greater quantities and also delivered faster. So what would happen to the heart rate? Well, the heart rate would increase. Therefore, more oxygen, more glucose delivered to the mitochondria of your working, moving muscles. Therefore, the rate of aerobic respiration would increase and you would have more energy released. So now let's have a look at what a classic question looks like with an extended response. Let's get out the old black pen. Right, first off, explain. What does that mean? Well, we all know that that means state because. So I've got to state something and give a reason for it. Explain how the change in blood flow. So that's my first thing. Where's my state? What is happening to blood flow to help him run? State. It either increases, it decreases, or it stays the same. So therefore, I'm going to state there is an increase of blood flow. There we are. I've stated the increase. Now, why? Because the muscle cells require, now this is the key. Number one, more oxygen. 2, more glucose. Both of these together means there is an increase in aerobic respiration. So then we've got more oxygen, more glucose. Now, if you don't have that qualifying word, you would not get the marks. We've got an increase in aerobic respiration. And what does aerobic respiration do? The whole point is that oxygen plus glucose, breaking down the glucose, releases energy. So there would be an increase in energy released, transferred as well. And that is aerobic respiration. There is something called anaerobic respiration, and then this is very, very simple, because if you know aerobic, you know anaerobic. And the saying is Orton Gangster Crew winner, Orton Gangster Crew plus winner. So all we have to do is write down what they are. That's Orton, oxygen, Gangster, glucose, carbon dioxide, plus water. And then it releases the energy. But if it's anaerobic, it means against aerobic. So we do not have oxygen. So we still move that down. So we've still got glucose. Now, if we don't have oxygen, can we have carbon dioxide? Well, no, we can't. Can we have water? Well, what's the chemical symbol of water? H2O. Well, we don't have oxygen, so therefore we couldn't make water. So we don't. And so what anaerobic respiration does, which is also in the cells, it's not in the mitochondria, it's in the cytoplasm. But when it breaks down the glucose, it only splits it in two. It does not break it down fully. And when it splits it in two, it releases less energy, but still energy, move, act and transport, maintain temp, build larger molecules. But it has a byproduct, which is glucose, partially broken down, equals lactic acid. And that is anaerobic respiration. Till next time, ladies.